Today's topic is the Polaris, the GSA Polaris GWAC IDIQ. And we are Trident Proposal Management. Just a little bit about me, if you don't mind. So I'm the president and CEO of Trident Proposal Management, a full service proposal, capture proposal firm. I'll talk about us in a bit. A little bit about me. Yes, I was a Naval Academy grad, Navy SEAL. I worked at Booz Allen. That's how someone with my background ends up in a proposal shop in the first place. I was also a director at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And the thing that I do mostly, other than running the company with Rebecca and Travis's help, is I mainly do oral presentation coaching. So if you have an oral presentation to the federal government for big dollars, I'm your man. Next slide, please. Yeah, a little bit about us. So we are a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. We're founded in 2008, so we've been around for quite a while from that perspective. We specialize in capture and proposal support. I'm going to talk about our services in just a second. We provide full-service business development, capture, proposal operations management, the whole 9 yards for federal contractors. Typically DoD, but also we've lately especially done a lot of work with DHS for clients that serve DHS, FBI, that kind of some of the federal stuff, and the 3-letter agencies as well. Next slide. And we have 4 major service areas, what we call market management. I'm going to dive into the market management side of things at the end of this presentation. And the stuff that you guys all know, capture management and proposal management, proposal writing, compliance checks, tech editing, that kind of thing. And then training, coaching, and mentoring, especially small businesses. We are there to help you on a fractional basis to get the right people hired and trained in your team so you can grow through business development and proposal writing. Next slide, please. All right, and here's just a quick plug for Trident for our offer today, which is to outsource your bid decision to support. There's a few reasons we think that this is the thing to do. So one is it gives you an unbiased look at your viability, and that's really, we're finding it really important. Rebecca has a vignette about that toward the end. The admin burden on your team, I think that's a critical piece, especially if you are a small business and you consider that you could be having your team be billable while we do the heavy lift here. So it's not just an admin burden, but it's a revenue producing activity if you outsource it. Evaluates you based on the latest guidance. So we're watching closely and we're not going to miss anything on that. Connects you to potential teammates. Yes, because we are a provider for, we provide services, across many markets. We'll be able to potentially connect you with a teammate or bring you teammates, depending on where you sit on prime or sub. But the most important thing is get this bid decision done early. Get it done now. And to get it off your plate or on your plate, but don't be halfway. That's the key to any kind of bid decision, is to find out a reason why you can't bid or shouldn't bid quick and decide to no bid. That's my philosophy around bidding anyway. That's the philosophy I bring to our clients. Click once. So that's for this bid decision support. We'll take you through the entire process of figuring out if it's a good idea or not to bid and make a recommendation. And that's just under $2,000. That is money well spent. The clients that have taken us up on this offer are been stoked to have gotten it done quickly and have, for the most part, figured out that they need to find a prime. So that's a great outcome because it takes a lot of work off your plate. All right, next slide. Okay, for the technical part of this presentation, where we give you guys the goods, we're going to go in depth into every part of the draft RFP and how it changed. I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca Whalen. She's capture SME, especially when it comes to these GWACs, especially when it comes to these points-oriented GWACs where you have to score so many points to get onboarded. But beyond that, she's also an expert senior proposal manager here at Trident as well. Navy Surface Warfare Officer, Naval Academy grad, because yes, Trident hires a lot of Naval Academy grads. 7-year DoD proposal writing management, and she also co-authored our book and process called Fast Prop. So you can dump all the crazy details that you get when you get other training in the industry and just do what you need to do to get proposals out the door. Rebecca, over to you.
All right, thanks very much, Jeff. And like you said, I'm going to be diving into some of the technical components of today's brief. So specifically, we're going to do a quick opportunity overview because I know we have a mix of returning guests and probably some newbies here. So just want to make sure everybody's oriented to what this opportunity looks like and why you don't want to miss it. We are going to cover the latest draft RFP updates and kind of what the implications are based on the changes. And we're going to give you some tips on how to prepare, whether that's through us or on your own, and then walk you through some next steps and options that you have as you continue to get ready for Polaris. So with that in mind, again, just an opportunity overview for this contract. This is GSA sponsored. It's going to be, where they're hoping the vehicle that they route all the IT service centric services through for businesses. They have not named a specific ceiling, but we're expecting at least $15 billion. So big is the bottom line there. And there are multiple pools for this IDIQ. They're expecting at least a 10-year runtime, so a 5-year period of performance. There'll be some on-ramps. They haven't obviously figured out all the details for that yet. But what we're encouraging people to do is, again, get in on the ground floor because the requirements tend to evolve over time. So, playing the game when you know the rules and when you're ready to play it can be a critical advantage. This is a small business set aside, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. So I already mentioned that one of the changes is this addition of the service disabled veteran-owned small business pool, but there will also be pools for women-owned small businesses, hub zones, and then just a regular set aside pool. One thing I do want to note, every single person who proposes either as a prime or as a sub needs to be a small business in the NAICS code 541512. That is, without exception. So if you are looking at your teammates, that should be the very first thing you check because there's no point in teaming with somebody who's not eligible or who's going to knock out your eligibility. As I mentioned, this is IT centric. They're expecting about 300 primes. We'll talk a little bit more about that in some of the subsequent slides. And the timeline for this, I put fall and winter with an asterisk because GSA is a little bit behind schedule. They were supposed to have the draft score sheet that they released about 3 weeks ago. That was supposed to come out over the summer, so that was delayed. The Q&A period, they've reopened it until the 15th of October, so they're still taking comments on the draft. I don't know if they will release another draft RFP before we see the final, but at this point, I would say they would be under a really tight timeline to release this on schedule in the fall. So not completely out of the realm of the possible, but they would really need to be aggressive with the changes and getting this thing on the streets. So that's at the high level, kind of what we're talking about today. So want to dive into some of these changes that we saw in the updated draft. So I already mentioned the addition of the service disabled veteran-owned small business pool. And with that announcement, GSA also kind of gave us some ceiling to work with regards to how many anticipated awardees they expect in each sector in each section. What's interesting about this is not a huge deviation from the first iteration of the draft because they said, somewhere between 80 to 100 awardees per pool back when there were 3 pools. So that would have been, about 300 at the max limit. And now we're looking at 310. So they've kind of carved some space out for the service disabled veteran-owned small business pool from the woman-owned small business and the hub zone pools to make room for this. Something I do want to mention, GSA released some FAQs in August, and in those FAQs, they made it very clear that there will not be additional set-asides within the small business pool. And then the other thing I want you to know is that when it comes to where a task order is going to be competed, it's the ordering contracting officer's discretion. So whether something comes out as a small business set aside or a woman-owned small business set aside or a hub zone set aside for the actual task orders, again, it's at the ordering contracting officer's discretion. So this is how many of each type we expect to see. We say about 310 because on a points-based RFP, it is possible to have a tie score. And if you're not familiar with points-based RFPs, or even if you are, just remember they go from the top scores down. So the top 100 scores in the small business pool are going to get the IDIQ award. Same thing with women-owned small business. The top 80 performers, the top 70 for service disabled veteran-owned, the top 60 for hub zone. Changes to the project value threshold. So this was something that there were a lot of questions about from industry, and I suspect GSA got a lot of feedback on when they asked for it. If you recall from the previous version, it used to be a $1 million threshold for relevant experience. Industry said, hey, you're working with small businesses. Do you really want to set the threshold so high? And so GSA said, well, okay, we're going to lower all of the project thresholds to $250,000, whether you're submitting a project for the primary relevant experience area or an emerging technology experience area. But something that they did change is with the release of the points, we can see that there are some pretty big tiers within the relevant experience category. So really bigger is still better when it comes to the projects, because you can get a lot of additional points for having a larger project. So they've got 3 categories. It'll be projects under $1 million. If it's between $1 million and $5 million, you get a point boost. If it's between $5 million and $10 million, you get another point boost. And if it's over $10 million, that's how you score the maximum amount of points. So again, the minimum is $250,000. But there's really no ceiling, and you are incentivized to propose higher projects, provided they meet all of the criteria, which is not necessarily easy to do. Okay, so moving on, they also established some minimum and maximums. This was really interesting to see. So if you looked at the draft RFP, you know that there are 5 primary experience areas. There's basically 5 NICS codes that you can submit projects against. And the most you can submit is 5 in total. So 1 per NICS code. You have to now have a minimum of 3. Before they kind of shied away from putting any kind of minimum in place. They just said, well, you know, in general, more is better. But we definitely know that to be the case now. And you cannot have any redundancy. And I mean that in 2 ways. One is that you can't say, well, I have 2 really great projects that qualify under 541, 511. So I'm going to submit both of them to the government and let them pick. Like, no, they're going to look at 1 project and 1 project only. So don't give them multiples to evaluate, because they're not going to, give you the benefit of evaluating 2 and then taking the higher score. The other thing, when I talk about exclusivity and no redundancy, is that you can still only propose a project for Polaris once per pool. So if you are a small business and you have this unicorn of a contract that was $12 million and fit, the NICS code 541, 519, or some other, highly desired NICS code, and it included cybersecurity, and it even covered an emerging technology area, and maybe you had some OCONUS performance, so all these things that would make the points add up. You cannot share that with multiple teams. You can be on multiple teams, but you cannot give that project to multiple proposals. If the government finds it in multiple proposals, they will take it out of all of the proposals you've submitted as part of, and nobody will get points for your project. So you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping close control over the projects that you are giving. If you're part of a team, the projects that you're giving to each of your teammates, and make sure that if you're the prime, if your teammate has teamed with anybody else, and if they have, what projects they've lent those other teams. So if you haven't picked up on this theme, GSA really wants small businesses who are part of small teams to be the performers on Polaris. And this is just another way that they're limiting some of that complexity and ambiguity in the contractors. Quick note on emerging technology. So there are a bunch of different emerging technology areas, but you have a maximum of 3 projects that you can submit and actually get points for here. Again, these have to be in different areas. So if you have 3 projects that include artificial intelligence, sorry, you got to pick your best and submit that one. So no redundancy in multiple areas. And the key here is that the emerging technology has to be integral to the performance of the contract. And we'll have to see, based on the final RFP guidance, exactly how GSA defines that. But it can't be, a subtask that's buried down in the PWS. They're going to want to see this emerging technology pretty front and center when it comes to the services. And again, for both the emerging technology and the primary relevant experience areas, you can only use these once on a proposal per pool. And the reason they have that caveat is that if you are a woman-owned small business, you're obviously qualified to submit under both the small business pool and the woman-owned small business pool. You don't have to select different projects for those if you're submitting as a prime in each one. But if you were to be on different teams, that's what they're trying to limit, again, is the use of duplicate projects and outside of your prime offer. We can talk about that a little bit more if you have questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so some other changes. Past performance is now required for all primary experience projects. If you remember from the previous version of the draft RFP, they were only going to have you submit 3 and you could pick which contracts you wanted them to evaluate. That's not the case now. Anything that goes in as a primary experience is going to have either an accompanying CPARS or it's going to need to have a past performance questionnaire filled out by the customer. Obviously, they gave us the point structure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the subsequent slides. And then they've removed some of the additional scoring criteria that they thought they were going to include. So this, instead of having cloud services be a point multiplier now, it's just cybersecurity. And then you don't get any extra points now for submitting projects where you had multiple subcontractors. So they really want to see what you did, what your experience is, what your capability is when it comes to these projects. Okay, let's dive into the score sheet a little bit because there's some interesting things kind of between the lines here. If you haven't, had a chance to dive in and do some of this analysis. So with the points-based RFP, so first off, as an orientation to Polaris, again, there's 6 volumes. Volume 1 is going to be your standard self-scoring checklist. It's your SF33. It's just kind of the general contractual stuff. And then for volume 6, it's going to be basically responsibility. So are you a solvent entity? Are you a responsible government contractor? Do you have the financials needed to participate in a GSA schedule? So 1 and 6 are pass and fail, and anything not listed in here is a pass-fail criteria. So with relevant experience and past performance, these really make up the bulk of the points that you can get on this proposal. This is why it is so important to choose high scoring projects and make sure you know exactly what the parameters are for what's going to get you extra points and what's not, because there are ceilings for some of these additional point areas. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So quick point I want to make on relevant experience. If you submit a project in all 5 areas, so all 5 NICS codes, but it's all commercial experience, you're going to be about 6,000 points behind somebody who can do the same with federal experience. So it's not that you are allowed to submit commercial experience, but just know if that's the only type of experience that you have, you're going to be 6,000 points behind people just based on the way that they've set the guidance right now for being able to score additional points. With past performance, right now, this volume, if you noticed on the spreadsheet, the score sheet that they gave us, they didn't break this out based on the quality of the score. So basically, if you have satisfactory, you score. And actually, they didn't even break it out on a points per project basis. They just kind of have a lump sum in there. I will tell you what we see, or what we've seen on previous GWACs coming out from GSA that are points-based, is there's usually tiers within the past performance category. So satisfactory is the minimum. And I would be very surprised if in the final RFP, we don't see additional points being added for having good or outstanding scores. So as you're looking through your projects, I would really encourage you now to pull the CPARs that you have and take that into consideration as you're trying to figure out what your highest scoring best projects are, because it might make the difference. Having an outstanding versus a good score could make the difference in you selecting that project and actually being more competitive in your bid. With the system certifications and clearances volume, so this one's interesting. Everything in this volume right now, this covers, by the way, ISO 9000, it covers CMMI, it covers having a facility clearance, it covers having a cost-approved purchasing system, and it's worth 11,000 points. So none of this in here is mandatory, so it's optional, but it is still absolutely vital. You don't want to go into a final round with an 11,000 point deficit. If you are the part of a JV, what you need to know here is that if you want to get points for a facility clearance, it needs to be either in the name of the JV or both entities of the JV need to have the same level of clearance in order to get the points. For all the other systems and certifications, right now, you're only going to get credit if the prime offer holds the system and certification. So that's something to keep in mind if you already have a teammate identified and maybe you have some of the some of the certs and maybe they have some of the other certs, you might want to run the numbers with the prime sub relationship flipped just to see how that's going to break out. And I'll give you an example a little bit further on. Okay, the really interesting thing from this draft RFP is the risk assessment. And this is 17,000 points. And I'm going to just give you this in a narrative form with some numbers so that you can see what the implication of this really is. Something else to mention. So again, just to orient you to the magnitude that we're talking about here. So if you're a small business, your maximum score you can earn is 91,500 points. If you're a hub zone, service disabled, veteran owned, or woman small business, you can earn up to 100,000 points. So I want to spend a little time, like I said, diving into this and kind of what they've done here and how they've incentivized teaming or disincentivized it. So talking in hypotheticals, if you were a woman-owned small business and you have 4 of the 5 qualifying primary relevant experience projects, let's say you can cover 2 of your projects include cybersecurity, so you've maxed out your points there, and you can cover 2 emerging technology areas all on your own. This is what your point totals would be. If you are looking at teaming with another company that you haven't worked with before, but they're really appealing because they have a relevant experience project in an area that you can't cover, and they have the 3rd emerging technology area that you need. Because, by the way, if you looked at the score sheet, if you can cover all 5 NICS codes, you get a point plus up. If you can cover all 3 emerging technology areas, you get a point plus up. And let's just say that they don't have any additional systems or certifications in what you have for volume 4. So that's a neutral rating right now. Should you team with this company? This is where it gets really interesting. If you were to bid on your own with your 4 projects, even though you don't have that 5th one, and your 2 emerging technology areas, and assuming you get full points for the past performance, because as we've talked about, there's that little caveat where there could be a tiered system in future iterations, your score would actually be higher if you submitted by yourself than if you teamed with this other company, because you're going to face an 8,500 point exclusion because you've not performed in that relationship before. So the government is really trying to discourage people from forming ill-fitting teams just for the purpose of bidding on Polaris. Now, there are some caveats where it would make sense to still bring this person on, right? So, but the qualifying criteria can't just be that they check a block that you can't. They would need to have a project that exceeds the $10 million threshold in order to get additional points, or they would need to, let's say you couldn't cover cybersecurity, which, by the way, is 3,000 points for each instance, right? Up to 2 projects. So there could be a scenario where it makes sense to still team with this person, but it's not a guaranteed thing. So if you're approaching Polaris with this idea of, well, I can cover these NICS codes and we have this other teammate that can do these things, if you perform together, great. You guys should definitely explore looking at collectively your top projects to submit here. But if you're going at this alone, you need to be very, very careful about the teammates you select. And I will mention here that as part of our eligibility check, like we give you a rundown. We ask you to send over the projects that you're thinking of. We look at every registration that you have in the system. We see what the government will see, and we'll give you a point total of where you're at and what your teammates should look like and the type of experience that you should demand that they have if they're going to be part of your team. So we will give you that unbiased, look that tells you, yes, you're in the running for this, or no, really, you need to keep looking for another teammate, or you need to consider being part of a value-added teammate to another team. Because the prime spot just may not make sense based on the experience that you have. It's not saying you wouldn't be, a great prime offer for the government, but just in this scale, in this setup, you may not have what it takes to be a top scorer. So we want you to know that early. Okay, so it gets a little bit more interesting too with the teaming, because I know probably what some of you are thinking is, okay, well, if the certs have to be in the name of the prime offerer, and maybe they've carved out this other pool, and so the competition is going to be tougher for small businesses. What if I'm the small business, and there's a potential teammate who's got a socioeconomic set aside category? and they want to, and you're looking at like who should prime, right? Because maybe you're thinking the competition would be a little bit better in that pool. Same kind of setup, right? If you've got 4 of the 5 primary relevant experience areas, if you've got 2 that include cybersecurity, and you've got 2 of the emerging tech areas, and this woman-owned small business seemingly complements your portfolio of experience, should you just make them the prime? The answer on this is still no, because if you are submitting in the HubZone, woman-owned, or service-disabled veteran-owned small business pool, and you're not putting forth at least 50% of the projects, there's another 8,500 point exclusion that you would be penalized with. And if you haven't teamed with this person before, that's another 8,500 point exclusion, which is 17,000 points total. So you really have to think through the implications of who's in what seat, what projects you're submitting, and there's a number of different categories and areas and ways that you could run the numbers. And again, this is what we're helping companies do right now with the unbiased look, so that you know if you actually are in a better position to prime or sub, or what role you should take on the team. You don't necessarily gain an advantage just by having the person with the company with a socioeconomic status be the prime for your bid. Okay.
Hey, Rebecca,
Sure.
I'm going to start with a question that I think maybe some of the people on might be thinking is, okay, yeah, you get the point penalty, but I really need a robust team to be able to bid on task orders. Are we going to be able to add teammates later?
Absolutely. Yep. So they made that very clear as part of the FAQ that you will be able to bring on teammates after award. So that's something to keep in mind. For sure. Step 1 is getting on the IDIQ, but if you're keeping the long view, right, of being successful on the contract, then yeah, absolutely, you can make changes to your team as you need to stay viable and competitive at the task order level. Great question.
Yeah, and then how does a business partner on a joint venture treated differently than, like, how do they consider who's the prime on a joint venture?
So I guess a couple of thoughts on joint ventures. One of the advantages, if you're not familiar with forming a joint venture, is that for the purposes of this bid, you could use experience either from either entity on the joint venture. It doesn't have to be in the name of the joint venture. The systems and certifications could be from either member of the team. So if you've got the cost accounting system, but they've got the CMMI, you can get points for both. Where you have to be careful is that, again, first off, both entities still have to be a small business in NICS code 541512. And then the other thing is that if you've not performed with the company that you're in a joint venture with, there's four very specific examples of what the government will deem a previous relationship. So you can either have experience as a joint venture where you both performed as this joint venture, or you can have performed on another team with them either as a prime or a sub. And that way you can avoid that 8,500 point exclusion. So a JV could be a good option, but it is not necessarily the best option for everyone because there's still some parameters and penalties lurking there.
Yeah, and then on the exclusion, that it was I was just noticing, I've seen this presentation a few times. I'm just noticing now that it's a little confusing. Is that a negative 8,500 or is it just you don't get 8,500?
You won't get those points. So the most
traction of points, there's just everyone else is going to get at least that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're performing by yourself, you automatically get the points. If you are performing, if everybody in your team you've worked with before, you automatically get the points. Mentor protege, we could have probably a whole conversation on those because that is one of the contracting teaming relationships that we know that they're still looking at. So I don't want to put you off too much, but I think we're probably going to have a separate webinar topic on that because there's so many, I don't want to say landmines, but there's so many nuances. And I want to make sure that we can dive into those accurately. So they are permitted. I'll say that much is that mentor protege teams are permitted. And there's some specific instructions in the draft RFP, but I would expect that we're going to get even more guidance from GSA as we get closer to a final draft.
Yeah,
or the final solicitation. Yeah.
they're doing a reasonably good job of taking away the ability to game this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're slowly closing all the loopholes based on lessons learned from
Yeah.
Astro and Alliant, and yeah.
And all the different questions that they're getting that are seeding, that people are thinking about things, asking questions, and oh yeah, we need to take that one out for sure. But Mentor Protege might be Mentor Protege. This is such a high bar to even get to the point where you're a Mentor Protege JV that it would make sense that they'd leave some flexibility for that, because it's the SBA's flagship way of getting small businesses to large. So
yeah.
We'll see. Any other great questions? Any other questions? You can raise your hand and I'll let you speak, or you can pop it in the chat. Either way. If you're furiously typing a question, put in "I'm typing a question" and then we'll wait. Otherwise, I think we should probably go forward. Rebecca?
Okay, sure.
Cool.
Yep. So these are these immediate actions. If you've tuned into our webinars before, you know that we have been preaching that your proper prior planning will prevent poor Polaris performance. And this is so true, because it's points based, and you know what you can score, and you know which projects, it's all going to be very binary, right? Either the record shows that you did the work and the government agrees, or you didn't. So first things first, confirm eligibility. And by the way, as we see iteration after iteration of this draft, you're going to need to keep doing this to make sure that nothing knocks you out of the competition. None of these little nuances as they become clearer and clearer. So gathering and evaluating your projects, I will tell you that the trick with these points-based RFPs is that the evidence that you have to submit is not evidence that you necessarily control. So you are going to fill out a project template for all the projects that you submit. You're going to need to submit the FPDS record. If there's something wrong on the FPDS record, you're going to need to explain that. If you're trying to claim credit for a project that is coded differently in FPDS than what you're trying to claim, you're going to have to try and justify that to the government, which means you're going to need to submit the statement of work from the contract, not the solicitation. If you're submitting the statement of work, it needs to have the same contract number, which, by the way, humans are flawed, right? So we're really encouraging people to take a look at the documentation you have and make sure that it has the right contract number on there and not the solicitation number, and then it's the final version. And if you've got a mod that it's marked as a modification, you can't just submit a random document that has no traceability to the contract that you're talking about. Doing this gap analysis, right? Understanding, are all of your projects in one NICS code and you think you've got 7, but as you start to do the scoring, you realize you've really only got 2 viable projects. How can you round out that portfolio? You need to know where you're scoring now in order to know where you need to fill. Looking at this viability as a prime, we talked through this a lot, right? Making sure that you should be in the driver's seat. And by the way, it shouldn't just be about the points. You really kind of need to take the long view and think through, how are you going to be successful on this IDIQ? Because on every GSA contract, there's a minimum contracting threshold. So if you're not set up right now to do $500,000 worth of business, annually with the government, and you've only got commercial experience and you don't have any federal customers, the money's not just going to walk through the door. You're going to have some sort of capture business development infrastructure in place. And Jeff's going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later today. But again, taking the long view, making sure that the goal is not getting on Polaris, it's being successful for the length of Polaris so that you're actually getting these task orders and winning. Looking at your teaming options, we talked about some nuances there and how it's not necessarily great for everyone, but it still could be a valuable relationship depending on the complement of the experience that you can each bring to the portfolio. And then gathering and reviewing your records. Some of this stuff in the other volumes is probably stuff that you have sitting on the shelf, an employee compensation plan, overtime policy. What do those things look like at your company? It's all very clear in the RFP, the other types of elements that you're going to need to submit as part of this proposal. And some of this pre-work you can do now because the guidance isn't going to change that much. Okay. So I do just want to mention, on our website, we have updated all of our checklists. We have checklists to help you determine your eligibility. We have checklists to help you rank your primary relevant experience projects. And we have checklists to help you with your emerging technology experience. And these are all updated based on the most recent RFP. They're free to download. It's very user-friendly. If you find something in red, it means you have a problem. You need to stop, take a look, and either find a new piece of evidence or reach out for help, because it's something you're going to need to correct before proposal submission. And if you need any help filling these out, please reach out. We're happy to help coach you through this, or you can take advantage of our eligibility package and review for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now. Walking through.
We have made it. Rebecca's done a ton of work in making the do-it-yourself option through Trident's checklists way simpler. And again, getting to this point where you decide to not bid. I know it sounds like it's kind of counterintuitive that me, the owner of a proposal development company, would encourage you to get to no bid quickly. But I'm telling you, working with large companies and small businesses alike, one of the biggest mistakes that I see companies make routinely is they invest really scarce resources into capture and proposal work for something that they can't win. And as soon as you find one reason that you can't correct, that you can't win, then call it a no bid and focus your scarce resources on something you can win. So anyway, so that's one of your courses of action, is to get to no bid. Then you can bid alone or build a team. Rebecca has talked about the reasons not to build a team for this. Certainly there's reasons to build a team, but there's a point differential there that you have to consider. So you can bid alone. We can help you with that. Certainly we can help you build that team. If you don't have anyone to bid with, there's likely a scenario where you'd want to build a team even with the point exclusions, just so you can get to the place where you might be able to win if you really want to take a long shot at it. And then to be part of a team, we can help introduce you to folks as well, companies that we work with as well as potential for that. So those are your courses of action. It says no bid. We can help you with no bid part of it as well. Certainly want to get you not focusing on Polaris if it's not right for you. So next slide, please. Just so you guys are aware, we're not, this isn't our first GWAC rodeo, if you will. And like Rebecca alluded to with Astro, with Schedule 70, there's all sorts of these GWACs out there that we help companies onboard. And there's a reason why we do a really very affordable firm fixed price, get it done for you offer. And that's because we actually want to get you to step 6 and 7. So this is our proven process for GWACs. This is what we do with our clients. And you can see it starts with eligibility check. Like, is there really a reason to bid in the first place? And if you go follow the line down, you'll see there's the decision points and then the tools and services that we provide either free through our website or through a paid service. Then we do project ID and gap analysis. Like, do you have the past performance? In some cases, do you have the people to win? Prime sub decision point, then we can get you into our Prime Finder service. If it's appropriate with Polaris, it may not be appropriate anymore. You know, it may be that that's just not, they've made that not the game to play. Then finally, we'll prepare your proposal for you if you choose that service from us. Get the award on number 5, and then get to where Rebecca was alluding to before, where you actually make money, get a return on your investment and the work you did to get onto the GWAC. And I think, you know, Rebecca, we should put the capture proposal data on GWAC, some prior GWACs, and how awards actually happen. And it's a logarithmic, right? 2 or 3 to 5, maybe 10 companies get actual money and everyone else gets nothing. That's the way these typically work. And so we want to we want to give you something inexpensive to get you onboarded so that we can help you with 6 and 7, which is what are the task orders that are going to come out on this thing? And then how do we capture that so that we can propose and win some work? Because that's the point of this. So this is our GWAC proven process. And these are all the different steps that we say you have to take to get onboarded and to finally get some work and to get a return on your investment. Next slide, please.
And Jeff, actually, before we jump into that, we just had a couple of Q&A. So I don't know if you want to hold those to the end or if you want me to address those now.
Let me hit one more slide and then we'll hit Q&A full on.
Okay.
So next slide, these are the options for Trident to help you out. And there's 3 of them. So one is there's the Polaris qualification check. We talked about that. That's just just for us, it's guiding you through, or actually not guiding you, doing the checklist that we've already developed for you so that you can have a really solid idea if you should bid prime or not. And so that's, $2,000, and it's just going to get you that bid decision, our recommendation for you. The next one is done for you proposal support. So this is concierge service. This is you send us all the data and we turn it into a proposal, right? So it's literally concierge. This is not us telling you what to do. This is us doing it for you with your, with your help and you giving us information that we need to get it done. We're only going to do 10 of these packages, or 10 or 12. I can't remember. Is it 10, Rebecca?
Yep.
Yeah. And so 2 have already been reserved. We're only going to do 8 more. So we expect they're going to go pretty fast. We're also raising the price. We found out some of our competitors are charging double. And so we're raising the price to $24,000 to $25,000, round up, $25,000 on November 1st. So if you want to have us do this for you, it's right now it's $20,000. And then if you wait until the Polaris actually comes out and you're like, oh no, we really wanted to do it, then we're going to charge you more of a market rate for that. And that's only if we have some of these packages left. So hopefully you guys will take us up on our Polaris ready qualification check, because that is money well spent. You don't have to think about it. You can focus on your current clients. You can focus on delivery, and we'll let you know if it's a good idea to bid or not. With that, next slide. All right, Rebecca, go ahead and field those questions.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is, do the projects submitted under primary relevant experience have to be the same projects that have emerging technology? And the short answer is no, they can be. So if you have a relevant experience project that also covers machine learning or artificial intelligence, or I think edge computing is another one, then they can overlap, but they don't have to. So it is a distinct project pool between primary relevant experience and emerging technology. And again, the max you can do for emerging technology is 3, and those are only 1,000 points each. So you definitely want to prioritize the primary relevant experience projects, but they are separate pools. And then the next one is, so in theory, you can only submit 5 unique projects that have to cover the right NICS codes, yes, and cover at least 2 emerging technology areas. Not quite. So again, you can have distinct projects for primary relevant experience and emerging technology. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you pop your hand up. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Anonymous attendee, you're welcome. Any other questions? You can either pop your hand or raise your hand, and I'll allow you to speak and we can talk through it, or you can put it in the Q&A, or you can put it in the chat. All right. Give it 10 more seconds. I think we might be done, Rebecca.
Yeah, this is your chance. You can ask us anything. We've been knee deep in this opportunity for the last 10 months. So
yes,
you
guys are definitely being a little bit lighter on the questions than in previous webinars, but maybe that's why we're getting less questions.
Okay.
Hey, Rebecca, I just want to thank you so much for putting this very, very in-depth, very detailed webinar together to give back to our industry that's taking such good care of us. And again, if you guys have any questions or any kind of issues with anything, you can head over to tridentproposals.com and you'll see lots of resources there. You can also email Rebecca or it's Rebecca@tridentproposals.com or Jeff@tridentproposals.com if you'd like to explore a deeper teaming with Trident. All right. I think with that, we will adjourn. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.